Hi, gang. Bob Bothing here with the Mystery Project for the next episode of Peggy Delaney, written by James W. Nichol. A painter apparently commits suicide by throwing himself in front of a subway train. Peggy, searching for the whys that led to the tragedy, uncovers disturbing inconsistencies among the people who knew him. Is it certain he jumped? The Last Drawing, starring Kyra Harper.
Hello there. You've reached Peggy Delaney, Toronto Tribune. If you have something confidential you want to pass on, just leave your name and number. The walls have ears. I'll get back to you. If you're calling to give me fulsome, unqualified praise for my columns, feel free now. If you're calling to scream at me, fascist, socialist, cop hater, cop lover, pro-lesbian, anti-lesbian, or anything else that strikes your fancy, go for it. After all, this is a quasi-democracy.
Your toast is up.
Okay. So, you look really perky this morning. How come?
Just checking to see if there's anything new on that artist.
The one who jumped?
Uh-huh.
You get hooked on the weirdest things.
But it's interesting, don't you think?
No. A man jumps in front of a subway train and gets splattered all over the place. It's revolting, if it's anything.
It's a human interest story. The guy seemed to have everything. He was at the height of his career, doing what he was born to do. Praise and fame.
Had you ever heard of him before he jumped?
Well, no. But then I'm hardly up on the art scene. Besides, he was a Canadian. Talbot Bartholomew. I know his name now.
And obviously he didn't have everything, or he wouldn't have jumped.
Uh-huh.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Wouldn't you know, the moment you arrive, the phone rings. Another inquiry, actually.
About Mr. Bartholomew?
Yes, a buyer. But I had to put him off.
Why?
The estate, of course. Everything is frozen until all this mess gets sorted out.
Is it a mess?
No, not really.
I thought I'd see some of his paintings up on your walls.
But you don't. All his work goes into storage for now, which is really not such a bad thing. When an artist like Talley dies, the value of his work goes up. Cruel, but true.
Poor Talbot Bartholomew. Worth more dead than alive.
Surely not him personally, Ms. Delaney. We all loved Talley so much. He was the dearest, warmest, most delightful person. I'm only talking about his work.
Uh-huh. And how would you describe his work?
It's been described in various ways over the years, none of which pleased Talley particularly. What he liked to paint, at first glance, seemed excruciatingly mundane. A gas station, ranch-style houses in suburbia, interiors and exteriors. He even did a series on the CN Tower, for God's sake. But there was something palpably wonderful about them, in the sense of full of wonder. It wasn't what he put in, it was what he left out. Something was left out. And though it's impossible to say just what, its absence transfixes the viewer with a feeling of how beautiful and how eerie everything in this world is, including ourselves. The effect is really quite amazing.
Why did he kill himself?
That's the question, isn't it? There's no definitive answer. He didn't leave a note. Didn't say. Let's celebrate his life rather than speculate on his death, Miss Delaney.
I will. Just trying to know a little bit more about the man. The reason he chose to do what he did. Might tell us something touching and human about him. My readers would be interested.
Well, I can speculate, but you can't print it.
Well, that's like saying I'll pour you a drink, but you can't drink it.
Better left unsaid, anyway.
No. All right. Off the record. I promise.
Actually, his work was, well, it was faltering over the last year or so. He was 52 years old and, well, everybody has a best before date, don't they? He knew it too. He wouldn't even show me a lot of the recent stuff. I had a talk with him not that long ago, and as it turned out, I wish I hadn't. I told him it might be better to take a long rest than to continue to paint and weaken the market with inferior work.
Did he agree?
I think he must have.
I've been thinking about us.
Really? I've been thinking about us, too.
Then you go first.
Oh? You go first.
Chicken. I think I know why I've been feeling panic-stricken every time you talk about renting a house for Amber and you and me.
Why?
Because of the work I do. I have this idea that I want it to be perfect, which is really stupid because it never is. But I want the words that I choose to be as close to the truth as I can get. And I want each column to stay in the minds of my readers afterwards, at least for a minute or two. I'm not saying it's art or anything really important to anyone else, but it's what I do. When I asked Amber to come to Toronto to live with me, deep down somewhere I was saying to myself, do I really want this? She's going to encroach on my thinking space. I'm going to have to get emotionally involved with her day to day, rather than just calling her up on the weekends. How can I work?
Has she encroached? Has she become emotionally burdensome?
Yes.
Has it hurt your work?
No. Enriched it. Enriched my life 1,000,000 times over, of course.
Then what are you saying?
Just what I said.
And the conclusion is...
There is no conclusion, Carlos. I'm just telling you what I'm thinking.
Oh.
So what were you going to say?
Nothing.
That's not fair. I tell you everything. I make myself totally vulnerable.
Let me get this straight. You don't want to live together because it will hurt your work. Even though you know it won't hurt your work. It might even enrich it. Is that right?
I didn't say I didn't want to. I'm just thinking about it, that's all. I need a little more time, okay?
Yeah, okay. I've got time.
But you don't have a lot of patience.
I had a marriage. I have my little girl I see every other weekend. I'm sitting in a bachelor apartment on Queen Street. It's okay for now, but I want some purpose back in my life. You know, I want a sense of direction.
I know. I'm not really hungry.
Me neither.
I want to go to bed.
Me too. So, you're interested in this artist, then?
Uh-huh.
Why?
I don't know. I guess maybe people who are obsessed with their work at the cost of everything else interest me.
Oh, yeah?
He had this studio on Spadina. Lived there, too. He'd studied in Europe, came back with an Italian girlfriend. They had 2 children, then split up. Then he married an art student. They split up, too. But mainly, he just rolled along year after year doing his thing. Or so his dealer tells me. He also said that maybe Talbot Bartholomew killed himself because he wasn't painting very well anymore. He'd lost the magic, whatever the magic was.
His dealer said that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Uh-huh. Why?
Well, it's just... his file's in our department right now.
Homicide?
Yeah, we're looking at it.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I'm not. The guy jumped about 11:20 p.m. on a Wednesday night in Osgood Station, right?
Right.
Jumped from behind one of the pillars that run the length of the platform there, tracks on either side, right?
I guess so.
Oh, I know so. Because there were 2 other people standing there waiting for the train that night. A lawyer who didn't see anything until he heard the train screeching to a halt, with Bartholomew already underneath it, and a computer programmer who'd been working late. She saw Bartholomew standing way down the platform, partially screened by one of the pillars, and she swears she saw a woman standing there, too. Trouble is, when the train came out of the tunnel, our witness was looking away, but she caught a flash out of the corner of her eye and turned in time to see Bartholomew bouncing off the front car.
God.
And the woman who'd been with him was standing on the very edge of the platform. the train whizzing by her face. Her eyes were drawn back to Bartholomew, naturally enough, and when she looked for that woman again, she disappeared.
The driver of the train. What did he see?
A split-second flash of a man in a long blue overcoat pitching out over the tracks in front of him, as if he'd been pushed.
Did he see that woman?
No. And no one's come forward either to say that they were with Talbot Bartholomew that night.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he was a bad father.
No?
No, it was more, he just wasn't a father at all. He was kind of a half-assed friend, I guess. That's what he thought he was being anyway. For me. For my little brother, too. Yeah, we could go up to his studio anytime we felt like it, as long as we didn't get in his way. We'd drink and smoke up there, and he'd never say anything to Mom. Hell, he'd hardly even notice. Sketching and painting and reading, blabbing to his friends. One time, I guess I was about 12, I was up there with my boyfriend, fooling around under these canvas sheets piled up in a corner. He was finishing some huge painting, standing up on this ladder across the room. My boyfriend started getting carried away. You know, I was really having a lot of trouble keeping him off. And I was terrified my father might turn around and see. And I was staring over my boyfriend's shoulder at him, and he was staring at his canvas, his eyes riveted there, dabbing some black paint here, some there. I remember thinking to myself, even if I scream, he won't hear a thing.
What did you do?
I stuck my thumb in my boyfriend's eye. Sure you don't want a drink?
No, thanks. Water and a smoke is fine. So, when did he and your mother separate?
When I was 6, and my brother was 3. He kept screwing all these young girls, arty types. So my mother gave up on him. She married a man who owns a used bookstore on College Street, Dante's. He's great. He's my dad. Talbot Bartholomew was the sperm donor.
You're still angry with him.
Why wouldn't I be? I know you want me to say something nice about him for your profile in the paper. Let's see. He was an okay painter, I guess. He had nice hair. That's about it. The last time I saw him, about a month ago, I asked him out to dinner, which I paid for. That's how I'd get him to listen to me. I told him what a lousy dad he was for about the 100th time. He said I was absolutely right. I couldn't be more right for about the 100th time, too. And then he grabbed my hand and he kind of looked at me in a way I hadn't seen before. His eyes were watery, you know, and red. And he said he wanted to make it up. How could he make it up to me? He wanted me to tell him what to do, and it sounded like he meant it. And I was so surprised. I didn't really know what to say, so I said there was nothing he could do. In fact, I never wanted to see him again. A month later, he jumped. And I feel responsible, you know?
In a way, I hold myself responsible, Miss Delaney.
Call me Peggy.
Why are we friends? Shush, Alfred.
No. Ms. Delaney always sounds like a school marm to me, that's all.
Tally was a great artist, Peggy. I'm pleased you're doing a column about him. I think he's the most important artist this country's developed since Michael Snow.
Really?
Yes. And I'm sure he'll be recognized for the major artist he is now that he's dead. Shut up, Alfred. I have a love-hate relationship with my dog. He won't do anything I tell him. Not unlike Tally. I'll just put him in the other room. God, poops all over the house. But then he wiggles up on my lap and snuggles his sweet little nose against my neck, and I just melt.
Not unlike Tally.
Exactly like Tally.
So you met your husband where?
At art college. He was supposed to be teaching a drawing class, but all he did was talk about the Blue Jays and flirt with the girls. I fell in love with him in about 10 minutes. It took 2 days to be invited back to his studio, and an additional 5 years to persuade him to go over to City Hall and get married, for the sake of my parents who live in Mississauga.
He must have loved you very much to do that.
Yes, he did. In kind of a completely oblivious way. He loved me to be there when he wanted me to be there, and to blend in with the wallpaper, not that we had any, when he didn't want me to be there.
But you're not living in the studio. You're living here.
That's very perceptive of you.
And you said you felt responsible.
Because I left him for good, about a year ago.
And you think that Tally, being left alone and everything, that
He was hopeless on his own, and he hated being alone. A couple of weeks ago, I finally called him and told him I wanted a divorce, which meant I wanted half of everything. Not only his savings, which actually amount to quite a considerable sum, but half of all his unsold work. Of course I wanted half. Why wouldn't I? He asked me to come back to him, as if a year was nothing. We could make it up. I said, not on your life, Tally. And then I called a lawyer.
And you think?
That I might as well have pushed him off that subway platform myself.
Tally was a complete pack rat. Some of these charcoal sketches go back 20 years. Dust, mouse dirt, and I have to inventory all this.
Well, like you said, everything he touched could be worth a lot of money now. And now that he's...
Yes. There's some wonderful stuff behind that old easel in the far corner over there. It'll give you some idea of what he was up to. It's his people sitting in living rooms watching television period. They're very strange.
I really appreciate you letting me have a look.
Well, you were right. You need to see the artist's lair, where he worked and lived and dreamed, and suffered too, no doubt, to catch the spirit of the man. Besides, I was coming over here anyway.
The spirit of the man, at first glance, seems to be messy.
I couldn't agree more.
What's all this about? They seem like streetscapes. Is that what you call them? And then...
He painted over them. Great, desperate smears of paint. I know. They were some of his last work. The work I criticized. So he destroyed them.
Oh.
The great bleeding irony is they're probably valuable too now.
Hello, Duncan. Sorry I'm late. Alfred upchucked on my Persian. Oh.
Hi again?
What's she doing here?
She called me, Brittany, and asked to see some of Tally's work. I didn't think there was any harm.
I'm just having a quick boo.
Oh. Well, I guess that's all right. You do know enough not to touch anything with your fingers, don't you?
Yes.
Good.
You stole this drawing from that dead man?
No, I just borrowed it by rolling it up when no one was looking and sticking it inside my coat.
Why?
Well, look how strange it is.
What's it supposed to be?
The inside of his studio. But the perspective's crazy, and the walls run right through each other.
It looks like...
A little kid's drawing.
Well, I still don't see why you stole it.
Well, because there's this dedication on the back.
Dear Zan, this is my very last drawing from my very own hand. Maybe it'll be worth something one day. Don't stay angry with me. Tally. Who's Zan?
I don't know. Not his daughter's name or his wife's name. And I wonder just how angry Zan was. It sounds like he wrote this close to the time...
He jumped.
Uh-huh. Or was pushed.
Pushed? He committed suicide, didn't he?
Not according to Carlos.
You're kidding. So what are you doing? Trying to catch a murderer? That is not part of your job.
Yes, it is.
Talbot Bartholomew's address book?
Yes. If you're investigating a possible murder, then you'd be checking out all the people in his address book, wouldn't you? So you must have it. Do you?
Huh? Yeah.
Got to the Zeds yet?
Not yet.
Does the name Zan ring any bells? Because I have the last drawing Bartholomew ever did. He dedicated it to some Zan, and he wrote, "Don't stay angry with me."
How did you come by that drawing?
I was being shown through his studio tonight, and I lifted it. Zan's number was in Bartholomew's address book.
Now what are you going to do?
Well, I'm supposed to bring the drawing and meet Carlos. They're going to trace the number to wherever this Zan lives and set up a surveillance. Then I'm going to call her and try to get in to see her. If she runs when I call, Carlos can follow her or arrest her or something.
And what if you get shot?
I won't get shot.
You get a kick out of this kind of stuff, don't you? Are you going to have a gun stuck in your pants?
Honey, Carlos wouldn't let me get into any overly dangerous situation.
Oh, yeah?
Want to come?
Yeah.
Who's that?
It's me, Peggy. I just buzzed downstairs. You just let me in the building.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Hi, Zan.
Yeah.
Thanks for, inviting me over. I thought when I told you the police had Tally's address book, you'd hang up.
Call me stupid. Is that the drawing?
Here.
So, have you talked to the cops yet? About finding this?
I'm a reporter. It's not my responsibility to tell the cops anything. But they'll be interviewing everyone in his address book sooner or later.
But you saw my name and number in his book before the cops took it.
That's what I said.
Yeah, right.
I think it's a drawing of his studio.
It is? Oh, God. Poor Tally.
The note I read to you, it's on the back.
Dear Zan, this is my very last drawing from my very own hand. Maybe it will be worth something one day. Do you think so?
Could be.
Don't stay angry with me. Tally. He must have forgot to give this to me. That night.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Because he was in such a mess. Oh, I'm in such a mess. You know, it's not like how that note sounds. I wasn't angry at him. He means after, that I'd be angry after.
After what?
I want you to help me.
How?
The cops won't believe anything I tell them. But if I explain it to you, maybe you can side with me. Put it in the paper or something. Make it public. Something.
About what?
About that night. I know there were other people in the subway. I know I was seen. I know the cops are looking for somebody.
So, what did happen that night?
Tally called me. He was calling me up a lot the last few months. We'd become friendly. Real good friends, you know? Though he just picked my name out of the back of the newspaper the first time.
First time?
Yeah, I'm a masseuse. Full body massage, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was the funniest man. And the loneliest man I ever met. He wanted me to drive him over to the subway and help him get on a train. He told me he was going to go meet a friend 5 stops off the line. His friend was supposed to be there waiting for him.
What do you mean, help him on a train?
He had a bleed. He wouldn't tell anyone. Nobody knew. Except me. I was even ordering him in groceries. He was going blind.
Oh.
He had been for about a year. And then a few weeks ago, he had this bleed behind his one eye, and everything just went completely dark. That's what he said. Just a bit of light, like a kind of halo on the edges. And if he cocked his head like some crazy bird, he could just manage to see. When he heard the train coming, he said, "Is that my train, sweetheart?" I said, "Yep." And he said, "Don't be angry." And he pulled away. I tried to hold him, but he jumped.
Sam, why did you run away?
Because it happened so fast. I was so scared. And because I've got a record, I've been arrested for prostitution 3 times. I know all about cops. I know whatever I said, they wouldn't believe me.
So, Carlos is going to check out the eye doctor that Bartholomew was going to.
Uh-huh.
With his confirmation and the fact that Zan had nothing to gain by his death, I think she's in the clear. Oh, here's your coffee.
Thanks.
Everybody felt so guilty. It's kind of funny.
It is?
Well, his dealer felt guilty for telling him his painting was going downhill. His daughter felt guilty because she'd said she didn't want to see him again. And his wife because she'd decided to divorce him. They thought, despite all the evidence to the contrary, he was deeply connected to them, that they'd driven him to suicide. And all the time, it was still all about him. His work, his art, his inability to do it anymore. That's all Tally Bartholomew was ever connected to.
You know, it was kind of weird sitting in that police truck with Carlos and the other cops, listening to you and her talk over their radio. It felt like we were a long way away from you, too.
Really? Huh. Remember what Zan said? That he was the loneliest man she'd ever met?
Yeah?
Well, sweetie, I'm right here.
You have been listening to this week's Mystery Project, an episode of Peggy Delaney by James W. Nichol, called The Last Drawing. Heard in the cast today, Kyra Harper was Peggy, Katerina Scarsone was Amber, George Bouza was Carlos Zavo. With them were Chris Britton as Duncan, Robin Brule as Patsy, Victoria Snow as Brittany, and Brooke Johnson as Zan. The music was composed and conducted by Milan Kimlicka and performed by Ray Parker, Kevin McKenzie, Rick Whitelaw, and Scott Alexander. The recording engineer was Greg DeClute, with sound effects by Matt Wilcott. The associate producer was Colleen Woods. Production and direction were by Bill Howell, the executive producer of the Mystery Project. Our coordinating producer is Barry Morgan. I'm Bob Boving, thanking you for listening and inviting your comments.